Hey there, I'm Lisa Kelly for Beaducation.com.
And I'm Mel McCabe with Beaducation.com.
We just shot this great class over on Facebook Live, our Beaducation Live show, but we've edited it and archived it here for you to watch.
If you hear us answering customer questions or talking to customers, you can just ignore that. That was just stuff that was in the moment when we shot the class, but there's still so much great content here.
Yeah, but if you have questions while you're watching this archive, go ahead and leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching through our site, just toss us an email at classes@beaducation.com.
And we'll get back to you with an answer.
Yeah, let's get into the video. What I want to show you, these are the actual pieces from the book. Actually, there are two of them. It's not the one with the feather. And all this is a wire and a blank in the middle with a decent sized hole that can accommodate the wire, any texture you did to the wire, making it wider, and then looped. So it's just a bangle. It's just going to go right over your wrist.
Well, I like that when I can do that.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? So, that's what this guy is. I like using different blanks for the middle, but you got to also keep in mind that the blank is going to be kind of heavy. So if you do a super, super light wire and a heavier blank, it's going to flip around. But
oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's okay. You can make it a little bit tighter to stay put or whatever. Like this guy will probably flip around unless I get the shape really tight on my wrist, but that's hard because then it won't go over your knuckles.
Okay.
So what I want to do today, I just want to show this before I go into these designs. This is really the design we're going to be doing today, but a little thicker wire. But I did want to show this. So this is our flat wire that's already nice and smooth on the edge. And I just stamped it with a bunch of flowers and then just connected this with jump rings. You want to have nice tension here so it's not too floppy. And then if you measure everything right, you can just slide it over your wrist.
Oh, that's a cute idea. I like that.
Wear it like that.
I love it, yes. And then you probably wanted to use pretty thick jump rings so that they wouldn't pull apart when you do that.
Yeah, and I used oval jump rings, and I put a link up there. I liked oval jump rings because they sit a little flatter.
Well, that's nice,
I love oval jump rings. I know you do too.
I do.
We are oval jump ring lovers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an option. The flat wire comes by the foot. We have it in sterling as well as this guy here, WIR050. It's really thin. I would not make a bangle alone out of this because it's not going to hold up. But for this design, it would hold up because it's got a lot more going on, a lot more bulk and a lot more support, not just like opening like that, right? Mm-hmm. So it'll be in a circle basically. So just wanted to put that up there as an option. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this off. And we're going to make this bracelet for you, Mel, based on your...
Yes!
I have to take it out of the shot because I can't see. And I need, in order to open these jump rings, I need it a little closer. Let's see if I can do it without... So you guys can see.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of hard because you got the camera in the way, too. How about
see? I'm so blind I wasn't even holding it.
Someone had asked too, Gigi had said, what about if you had used a clasp on one side? Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, you could totally do like a lobster or a spring ring on one side.
Yeah, I really like the way the swivel lobster looks, which we have in our shop.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do it, or you could build a hook on one side and hook it into that jump ring. It just adds more bulk and more questions when it comes to like the formula on how to size it. Mm-hmm. But for sure, I mean, these are all great ideas. Okay, so here's the little blank. Let's talk about what I started with. Mm-hmm. So this is our plaque. It's the large, elegant plaque, I believe. Mm-hmm. I stamped it. I put black in the impressions and polished it. And then with the power punch, I punched these holes. I think this is the 1/8. I'm not sure, but I love the way that looks. Mm-hmm. It was flat. That sound effects didn't work as well as I wanted to. And before going ahead and making it into a bracelet, I took the bracelet bending pliers and gave it a little curve so that it flowed around my wrist better. You can also do this on a mandrel, or you can grab it with large wrap and taps and just give it a little bit of a bend. Mm-hmm. So you get a little bit of a curve, right?
Love it.
So Mel, I thought that I would basically make you this bracelet, but with this thick wire.
Oh, it's nice.
I don't actually remember what it is, which is why I grabbed my handy dandy gauge. I think it's 10 gauge. Oh, that's really loud. Let's see. Okay, that's the spot for 14 gauge. Doesn't fit in there. That's the spot for 12. You see that 12 right there? Mm-hmm. Does fit in there. So that's 12 gauge.
12 gauge.
And this tells me 0.081 is the inches and 2.05 is the millimeters. And they're talking about the thickness of this wire. This is a nice handy tool. All right, so first thing we need to do is measure your wrist. So bring it on here. And actually, we're not measuring her wrist, we're measuring her knuckles because we are making a bangle. And if you were putting a clasp on it, it would be totally different. But for today, we're making a bangle. And it's got to fit over this. This is like the biggest part of your hand slash wrist, right?
So you do make kind of like a fist like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And then you measure right over here. Don't measure down here because it won't get over this part.
Right. This makes sense.
You got to measure the biggest part. And not super tight, but not also super loose. Mm-hmm. So yours is about
9 inches?
I think so. Let's see.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Is it?
9.
Oh, perfect.
So that 9-inch number, what that means, thank you, is that is our end result. And that's what you need to start with. So you need to start with what size you want this to be when it's finished, right? So let's say this was for Mel and we completed it and succeeded. That means this entire length here would be 9 inches. But there's a lot of factors that come in play here, so stick with me. This is a very thin tape measure. So if you're making this bracelet out of something a lot thicker, like this, and this is one that I made yesterday that I was just testing, then you have to accommodate for this thick wire.
That makes sense.
It's actually some math that involves pi. Now before you hit close this Facebook Live, because she just said pi, and I'm not doing math, instead of doing the whole pi, 3.1415, I just call it 3. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to multiply the thickness of this metal times 3. But let me make sure I'm not going out of order. Okay. So her knuckles are 9 inches. 3 times this wire, which as I showed you on the thing is 0.081. So 3 times that is 0.243. Let's just call it 1/4. It's very close. Mm-hmm. You with me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mel's looking at me like, oh, girl, I don't know. This is a lot of math.
I know. I was hoping it was going to be cherry pie or apple pie. I don't know.
Okay, so 9 inches is what we would want the end result to be if her, whatever metal she was using is this wide, but since it's thicker, we have to add that 1/4 inch, which we figured by multiplying the thickness of the wire times 3. And then I give it a little wiggle room because that would be the perfect fit around your knuckles. Let's give it a little bit of wiggle room, which is like another 1/4 inch. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. So now 9 plus a 1/4, which was 3 times the metal, plus a 1/4 is 9.5. Are you with me? Okay, so 9 and 9.5 is what I want this entire thing to result in to fit over your knuckles. Now, I'm not going to just cut my wire at that because this is going to take up some of the space.
Right, and so it depends on the length of the blank that you're going to use in the center.
Yes. So, but not only that, it's not the length of the blank. I told you guys I was going to give you a lot of information. Let me come in.
The length after it's been domed.
And
the width, or the thickness of the blank, too.
Ooh, I didn't even think of that. Only if that's thicker than the wire.
Oh, okay.
But what I was thinking is, it's not the length of this.
The holes, after you put the holes in.
The edge of the holes. So this is what you're concerned of. The edge of that hole and the edge of that hole. Mm-hmm. Right? Because this part's overlapping.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
And this is in the book. If you guys have the book, all this is in there. Okay. So I know, because I already measured it, that from the outside of this hole and the outside of this hole is 1.5 inches. Mm-hmm. Right? So my overall 9.5 inches, I'm going to subtract that 1.5 inches. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want that.
That makes sense.
In my wire.
Yes.
That brings me to 8 inches. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, we have one more thing to consider. We're going to be making loops.
Loops.
So what the number I'm working on right now, you guys, just to remind you, is the length of wire I need to cut. So far we're at 8 inches, right? So the loops take about a 1/2 inch each-ish. So we're going to add that back in. You with me? Okay. Let's do this again. We're at 8 inches. That would get a straight wire from here all the way around to there.
But not including the loops.
But we need 1 and 2 1/2 inches out here. So that's 1 inch. So we're going to add it back in. Now where are we at?
9 inches.
9 inches. And you go, oh, well, we started, her wrist was 9 inches. So why didn't we just start with that? But that, I mean, if we had used a blank that was a 1/4 inch or a blank that was 3 inches, that wouldn't have, I mean, it's coincidence. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That we ended at 9 inches. I don't get too into the 3 times the thickness in the book because I use such thin wire. This is 16 gauge.
That looks great too.
So thin. Yeah, I had to harden it a bunch by hitting it either on a mandrel, which we'll get into, but I might as well do it now, or hitting it on my bench block with my plastic mallet. Really hardening it up. I put a little bit of maybe a sheet underneath to protect it. If you wanted it to really harden up, you can use a chasing hammer, but that will affect the shape. That will flatten it a little bit.
And would it leave like a texture too?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But that was my next question to you. On your part that comes around on your bracelet, do you want a little texture on it?
I love a little texture.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take, I've got this huge roll of wire, and I do encourage you guys that if you are doing this, don't go straight to sterling. Like, sure, this part you can power out because you're good at this, but when it comes to the bracelet part, grab, you know, equivalent of copper or something cheaper.
That makes sense. You could mix your metals and just do a sterling blank and then like do a copper wire.
Yeah, and this is aluminum and sterling wire.
Oh, that's smart. I like that.
I don't
lighter,
know. I would have done
maybe.
sterling. I just had aluminum on my desk.
But also, wouldn't the aluminum be a little lighter and less likely to roll around?
Yeah, that's a great point, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take my chasing hammer. I'm not going to cut my wire and texture it because this is going to make it grow. Anything you're going to do to this wire, you need to do before you cut it at that 9 inches.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
Because if I cut 9 inches and then texture it and paddle at the ends and all that, I'm going to end up with 10 inches without realizing it. So I'm just going to feed it through here and give it a little... This gives it a little texture as well as it really hardens it. I don't think that's 9 inches yet.
No, I think you're right.
Now here's the thing to consider as well. I am thinning this metal. So it's no longer... But I'm not really thinning it a ton.
Yeah, that's true.
But I want to point that out in case anyone's like, well, wait, you were going with the thickness of the metal. I'm just barely thinning it. If you really flattened it, well, then, yeah, you're going to have to redo your measurement because now your bracelet wire is not as thick as before when you tripled it and you did pie. And you ate pie.
Terry had wondered if copper tubing would work for the bracelet portion.
Yeah, totally. It would work better for this one. Because it'll get really flat. This one, it's going to be hard to curve it at the end and then get it through a hole. Right? Okay. Let me see. We hold this.
Also, Carla had asked you tumble the bracelet afterward.
Sure, yeah.
You can.
Yeah, I definitely would. I tumble everything. Okay, this is 9 inches. I'll take that back. So we have a couple more inches to go here. And again, I'm not really changing the shape a ton. But what I do like about this is I'm hardening it. It'll help your bangle keep its shape.
That's cool.
And I made one of these yesterday and totally screwed it up. Like I went to put it on, I was like, oh my god, it's too small! Which is why I made a hook here instead of... I also like the look. Let me just measure here. 9 inches. How are we doing? Good. I like the look of paddled ends.
I do too.
You can see here the little... I'm coming back in. Coming back in for the zoom. See that paddled end? I'm going to paddle one end before I cut it. Because if I cut it at 9 and then paddle both ends, I'm going to end up with 9.5-ish.
Oh.
So to paddle, You just put it right there and really go at the end. If you had cut your wire really straight, it'll come out nice and rounded, but mine wasn't straight. So in comes our friend, the file.
Most of our hammer is dead soft, is that correct?
Our hammer?
I'm sorry, our wire is dead soft.
Yeah.
That's a question we had just received.
Yeah, I only carry dead soft because it's very easy to harden wire, but it's very hard to soften wire. I mean, not hard, but you have to have the right. So, okay. Do you see that with a nice file moving in the right direction? Go in one direction of the file. Nice and paddle. Okay, now, did you notice? No, you didn't because it's an angle, but if I pull like that, that's not the right measurement. You have to make sure that the wire's flat when you measure this. I'm going to get this right at 9. I'm actually going to cut it a teeny bit short because I'm about to paddle it. All right. Paddling the other end. Let's start with a prettier cut than that. And those are the Fat Daddy cutters. They're wonderful. That's not their given manufacturer name.
No, but I like it.
We named them that and it's stuck.
Well, it's easy to remember.
Fat Daddies. So that paddle looks bigger than the other one. So I'm going to give it a little file. I could make the other one bigger, but here's where making a big hole in your blank comes into play.
Oh, that makes sense.
Although I do have a trick to get around that. Now if you find these are sharp, grab some sandpaper, or I just happen to have here a nail buffing file and get those edges. And please ignore, now that we're on a close-up, my bench block. It's been through many classes. It's been abused.
Well, that's okay. I mean, that's how a lot of them look, right?
You don't want to have these dings in it. If you have dings in it, you did something wrong. Okay, so guys, let's measure before we shape this and make sure it's still at 9. Yeah? Because I've done some filing, I've done some... And if it's not, well, I'm going to make this for me. Oh, look it. It got too...
Did it get too long?
No, it got a little short. Which, maybe this is good. Maybe I did that on purpose. It got to 8.5. Something in there. I must have cut it too short before I paddled it. So it's 8.5. You know what we're going to do? We're still going to do it to see if that wiggle room is okay. And then if it doesn't fit you, I'll trim it and make it into a hook. How about that?
Also, don't forget, because we did hammer the, since we hammered the wire, maybe it's not exactly 12 gauge, like you said.
That's true. We thinned it
could be 14.
Slightly. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Why do we go in one direction with the file? We have gotten that question.
The file is made to cut in one direction. This is the most effective direction. So if you go in both directions, you end up just clogging it. There's a lot of arguments about this, that if you go in both directions, you're ruining your file. I don't see how doing that on copper is going to ruin your file because this is a lot harder than the copper. But let's just keep, good practice and just go in one direction.
Okay.
But different from sandpaper, which you can use in all directions, right? There's no facing grit. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to shape this. We're going to shape it into a circle. And I'm going to do that. You can do it on a mandrel, but I'm going to use my bracelet bending pliers. Just make sure whatever end you want facing out is inside this loop this way, right?
Oh, that makes sense.
So if you textured it, you gave it like even more texture than just flattening it, or you stamped on it. You want to make sure that's facing out. So I just come along and I'm just chewing away at it, just scooting and squeezing. The harder you squeeze, the more it hardens it.
Oh, that's cool.
See? This is very soft metal, so this is working with me. It actually feels perfect. It's not going to be so soft that it's going to totally come out of shape, but it's not so hard that it's not shaping. If it was so hard that it wasn't shaping, I would anneal it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That looks a little wonky,
brass or
but
something.
that's totally fine. So let me just get this last bit. Here we go.
Donna had mentioned if you filed in both directions, it could clog your file and create burrs on your metal.
Yeah, that's right. The main concern is clogging it, not like ruining it. They do have stuff to clean your files. Okay, so at this point, since I paddled it, I want to make sure it's going to go through my loop, which it doesn't on that side. So I'm going to have to file down a little bit. And it does on that side.
That's nice.
The other option is
Punch a bigger hole.
Yeah, that'll be scary. But I'm just going to take this piece of scrap that I have here. In the book, this is how I do it. It actually makes it a little more secure. We're about to do this step, but what I do is I bend it, I put it through, then I paddle it.
Oh,
by
yeah,
laying it right on the edge.
I actually thought that was how you did it originally. That's interesting. Okay.
So you can do it in either direction, so if that's the case. So this is the big guy. We need to bring it down a little bit.
You could technically even stamp on the paddle, like a little tiny design stamp.
Yeah, that'd be really cute. We're not going to punch a hole. Oftentimes you paddle and then punch a hole. Let's see if that's good enough. Sure. All right, we're back at a circle here. Everybody still with me?
They're here. Yep. Whew. Except Stacy. She had to go pick up her son from kindergarten, but she's going to watch the replay.
Awesome. Okay, so now remember we talked about how it takes a 1/2 inch to make the loops at the end?
Yes.
So I'm going to take that 1/2 inch. If I was real smart, I would measure it, but I'm not, so I'm going to fake it. And I'm going to make sure that the 1/2 inch is at the edge of my plier here. Because when I bend this, I'm going like this. So I'm bending against this edge. So 1/2 inch has to be right there, not in the middle and not out there, right there, because I'm going to do that. Okay. And again. Now, this is something to remember. When you roll this out, if you did want to stamp on it, look, what was once the inside is now the outside. So you would have had to thought about that and stamped on the right side. I'm confident I would have done that wrong. Okay, you're done. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so here is a little opportunity for you to check your size and maybe make some adjustments if you need to. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to put that on. Before I roll everything down, I'm going to have my model come in here.
Oh, maybe I should take off my ring, huh?
Yeah, try that on.
Try it on. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is good. This is going to be good. It's perfect, actually, I think. Look, it just goes over.
Yeah. So then that little 1/2 inch. The other thing, too, is because, remember, we needed 9 inches and I ended up with 8.5. I bent these a little shorter than 1/2 to give myself more length here.
Yeah, yeah.
So, again, this is why you guys can see that we can't do, like, a certain exact formula.
Now, Lori had said she knows when you were measuring the wire, you didn't straighten it before measuring it, like how, because you had textured it, it had gotten a little bit wavy.
It got a little wonky, but I held it straight when I measured it, and I knew that it was gonna either all work out eventually, or I would straighten it after this, because look, it's already...
When you were curving it,
it's already, like, pretty straight. We've got this little wonky part here, but it's not enough that it's going to affect the size.
Right.
If it was really wavy, then yeah, we'd have to fix that. Okay, the next step from here is just to roll these guys down. Okay, with this on here, I'm going to take round nose and curl this down. Now this is a point that when I made this dude right here, it was a little small, so I cut this shorter so I could have a little more of that length here, which made it perfect. And instead of rolling it all the way, I just rolled it this much, so that now this is a hook.
I love that.
But you have to make sure that this entire part, see if I can get this whole part that's within my pliers, has to fit in that hole. That's the problem. You have to make sure that it fits in that hole, because if the hook is too big, you have to go all the way over, reach over to get it in there, and then it's an awkward angle, and you're not going to be able to distort it because it's on your wrist. So you got to make sure, this is the tricky part, is getting that correct, that it fits in the hole.
That makes sense. Okay. Cindy had asked, she said she understands getting over the knuckle, but then won't the bracelet be too big? But Cindy says it's not a cuff, it's going to be a bangle. You should have some movement on that. So
yeah, that's how all bangles work.
Bangles bangles jangle.
And
so
that's why bangles are
right?
hard to fit to people because it all depends on their knuckles. If you have someone with a teeny tiny wrist and huge knuckles, that you can make it to fit them, but then it's going to slide up and down their wrist. So bangles are a little trickier, but they're always trendy. They've never gone out.
They're fun.
You know, they're fun. So if you did make it like this, though, with a hook, you can make it a lot smaller.
A little
because
bit more
it's
like
not going over
Mm-hmm.
your knuckles anymore. It's going like this and then hooking in, right?
So
that can
way,
be a lot smaller.
That way you would probably just want to measure a little bit less than the knuckles.
Yeah, you definitely want less. I don't know the exact formula for that.
Practice on copper, people.
I mean, what you could do is you could measure your wrist here, give it a little wiggle room, and then work backwards like we did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're not working, it's the same thing. We're not working with this measurement or this measurement. Even if you cut this too long at 1/2 inch, it doesn't matter because you're going to be cutting one to make a hook. We're going to grab with my round nose. I'm going to grab kind of a big spot here. You see how it's tucked in there? Just like making a loop, except remember this wire is very hard now because I've flattened it so much. So even though it's thinner, it's still hard. This is a very awkward movement, but let's try to do it together. I'm just going slow. I'm not going to be able to make a perfect loop because I've got that in the way, but see where we're headed there? This is a spot where you could stop and file and do what you need to do to make that a hook. I'm just going to continue, and remember, these are tapered, so I'm going to make sure I'm not working on just one side. Okay, there's that.
Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
So cute! Also, with round nose, they will mar your wire if you squeeze too hard, and in this case, you kind of have to squeeze too hard. Now here's an opportunity as well to adjust it a little bit. This is probably going to come out a little bit big because look, I didn't complete my loops. So really I was considering it would be from here to here. You could come in with your round nose and move the loop along a little bit more and that would shrink it up if that's what you need.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, kind of spiral it if it was too big.
It'd be hard to fully spiral it, but that's the beauty of having this paddle. Because spiral you have to then grab it. And it's so hard. Okay, try it on.
Woo! Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Look at it.
Do you feel like it's too big?
Nah, I like it. I mean, my thing is as long as it won't come off, and it won't, you know.
That's it.
But thanks you guys so much for joining. I can't
Thank
wait
you so much.
to see what you create.
Yeah,
enjoy your
so
bangles.
cool.